Hi, good morning, everyone. We're supposed to wait a little bit, but sure. Welcome. We are very happy to have you guys here, considering the beautiful day that we have outside. Finally, we are having some light, and soon enough, the heat comes in. Thank you for coming, and today we are going to have our lecture done by Marcio. He's going to talk about inner transformation and using Paul of Tarsus. I'll say Paul of Stephen. But before we do that, as usual, Livia is going to do the initial reading for us, and Teresa is going to do the prayer. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Today the initial reading is from the book Happy Life by Givaldo Pereira Franco and Joana de Angelis. Do not put all your hopes in entertainment, trips, party, and play. If the opportunity arises to enjoy them, fine. Take advantage of it, and you will find that these pleasures pass away like any other satisfactions, and they leave you anxious for new chances to enjoy them. Some people sacrifice their future, taking out loans and making payments with interest rates to live these illusions, which come back to haunt them when the debts must be paid. Look for simple, lasting pleasures, those that do not disturb the present or enslave your future.
So let us all now connect our hearts and our minds with God our Creator, with Jesus our Master, and with all the good spirits present here today. And let's thank for the opportunity of being here once more to learn a little bit more from the gospel that our Master Jesus brought to us. And let's ask the good spirits here present to enlighten Marcio during his lecture, so he can help us to absorb a little bit more of those laws of love and charity. They are so important for our moral progress. Thank you very much, and so be it. Marcio, that's all you
are. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here with you guys again. We apologize for not having the the projector. We had a technical problem, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible. Okay. So the theme of the lecture today is Paul of Tarsus, an example of inner transformation, and everything that I'm gonna talk about is based on this book here, Paul and Stephen. I don't know how many of you have read this already, but it's a book from Francisco Cândido Xavier and by the Spirit Emmanuel, and it talks about the life, of Paul and how he met Stephen, who was his brother-in-law. Well, he didn't become his brother-in-law; he was almost brother-in-law, but and how that affected his life. I'm so sorry. I will be telling you pieces of this story, so if you have not read it yet, you're gonna know when you read it, but spoiler alert there. Okay, so but the piece that I'm gonna talk about, I think that most of you guys know, and most of us already is aware because of St. Paul, right? Everybody knows, most of us know the story about St. Paul when he met Jesus for the first time, and that he was in his way to Damascus and he became blind. He see this beautiful light and become blind for a few days, and in that moment he talks to Jesus, right? And we take that as the moment when Paul got transformed, when he transformed himself from Jewish to a Christian. He start following Jesus teachings, right? But the question, and what we're gonna see now is that the only moment? Is that really the moment that everything happens? It's when I think about that story, what comes to my mind is it would be so easy if Jesus just come here now and make me blind for a few days, and then someone else come and make me see again, and everything would be fine, I'll be transformed. That would be very simple, right? That would be very kind of a miracle. But the reality is not that simple. That was a key moment, right? That was, of course, the moment that you met with Christ, with Jesus, it would be a sublime moment. And we know from another book from Emmanuel that there were people that met with Jesus and nothing happened, right? People that met with Jesus when he was alive and they didn't get transformed, right? So what is the difference, right? And that's a little bit what we're going to go through today with a few examples that I will bring to you guys through this book. That the transformation happened during our lives, right? Not only this one, but lives before this, lives after that, this one, for many incarnations. That is what happened. The transformation is happening all the time. Every single day, every single second, we have the chance to do this transformation. And that's what we're going to see through the example of Paul and Stephen. With the example of Paul in the book, Paul and Stephen. Okay? So, the transformation, as I was saying, started much before he gathered with Jesus, much before the moment that he got with him. And there is a passage in the book that says he had lacked inner peace ever since adolescence. And through Spiritism, we know that adolescence is the moment where the spirit has fully remembrance of their emotions, our emotions, our virtues, our vices. So it's not that they remember everything that happened in their lives, but all those vices and virtues that we carry with us as a spirit, it became very, very much live in us. It became really everything that you have, because that's why we always say in Spiritism and psychology also says about that the initial years of a kid is the best time to teach them moral new things, right? Because that's the moment that they still can be modeled. They can still understand the difference with right and wrong. And then when all those emotions come back to them, they kind of they spirit remember everything that happens, right? So he has been looking for his peace since very early in the adolescence. And it continues saying, the teachers of Israel proclaimed that it could be found by fully observing the law. And by law is the Jewish laws, or the Moses laws, right? He had held on its principles above all else. He had consecrated himself to the ideal of serving God with all his mind. Where then was the spiritual peace he craved so much in daily endeavors? So, in this passage it says that Paul, he has been doing everything that he was taught to find that peace within himself, right? That he can. He was very systematic on understanding the laws, being very orthodox, in all the teachings, and putting in practice every single word that he learned. But even though he was doing all of that, he didn't find his peace, And some of us here, not everyone, I know that some people here grow up in a Spiritist family, but some of us here that have gone through other religions, and then we start finding our peace a little bit here in Spiritism, right? I know it was for me, and it was for other people that I know here in TSS, that we had questions. While as much as we believe in God, as much as we believe in Jesus, we knew that there was something bigger and more important for us to to understand, we find in Spiritism the answers that we were looking for, right? That doesn't mean that the other religions doesn't people cannot find peace there. You know, that is what we find in Spiritism is what we need to our progress. And every single spirit has will follow whatever religion that makes sense for them in this life, in this present moment, to continue their own progress, right? So we here at TSS with Spiritism, we find this as if what we need for our hearts and our minds to put in practice everything that we learn. So in the Gospel according to Spiritism, the chapter Be Perfect, the Spirits tell us, Spiritism, when well understood, but especially when well felt, inevitable lead to the result listed above, and the above is all the description of the moral persons, which characterize oh my god, my notes didn't come with, which characterize, if I'm not wrong, which characterize the same as being a Christian. So what he's saying in the Gospel is that we can know everything on Spiritism, all the Kardec's book, all André Louis' books. We can understand all of that. But if we don't feel it, if we don't understand that from our hearts, you know, if we don't put everything in practice, you know, we are just being how can I say it, professor, or you know, teaching something that we were taught, right? We're not really understanding it from our hearts, because that is what is important for all of us, right? So when we go through any religions, if we just take whatever people tell us, you know, that is not really feeling and understanding from our hearts what that means. So when we study Spiritism, I can be telling you guys everything about Spiritism here, but you know, and you can get everything, you can understand, but it's really when it touches our hearts that we can do something about it, right? And that's what is important. So Paul was trying to find his peace. Paul was trying to do his best with the knowledge that he had at that time, and he was very orthodox with everything, and start to persecute the Christians. And we know that when he met with Jesus, he goes and Jesus asking him, "Why you are persecuting me?" But there is he also says, Jesus also says to him, "Do not kick against the goats," you know. And what he's trying to say is that, you know, we have been called every single day to follow Jesus. And then in the book, Paul and Stephen Emmanuel says that ever since his first encounter with Stephen was Abigail's brother, who was a Jewish, converted to Christianism, you know, the first beginning of that, and he lived with Peter the apostle, and he started to Stephen really understood, he was really prepared to be one of the first Christians and disseminate what Jesus came to teach us. And Stephen was, I'm gonna tell the story, sorry. Stephen was killed by Paul, but Stephen and Paul, they had a few encounters. They meet a few times, and Paul had the option, the opportunity as well, but the opportunity to start following Jesus without the need of Jesus going to him and, you know, make him blind, etc., etc. So, and the book, they continues, great powers had been compelling him at very moment and everywhere to meditate on the new teachings, Christ has been calling him by every way and means. So Jesus was calling Paul. He was not listening. So he showed up to Paul, right? And that's what happened to us every day. Jesus is calling us every single day, right? And trying to get us united to him, right? And there are some examples of how can we identify those calls, right? When a coworker came to you and say something or do something that you didn't like, Jesus is there. Jesus is there calling you to forgive, to practice love for your enemy, to practice forgiveness. When we have health issue, right, and we have that here and there, right, and then or some people have very conditions, disability since they born, right? So that is also Jesus calling us to practice resignation, right? We have positive. There's some things that sounds, just through bad things. No, when we get a message from a Facebook message, right? A positive message there, or someone came when the moment that we need, and we get a hug from a friend, when we're studying our gospel at home, all moments that that is there. Jesus is there with us, keeping calling us, right? That is the moment that we're closest to him, right? Or when we're in the spring weather and we're looking for all the heat and the good things of the summer, right? There is Jesus calling us to practice our patience. Summer is coming. So Paul had the opportunity many times, right? And when he visited Stephen, and Paul started to talk with Gamaliel. Gamaliel was kind of a mentor for him, and who to Paul, the person who teach him and make him one of the most important people in the Jewish community in Jerusalem. So Gamaliel also told him, Paul, try to understand what these guys are doing. Don't be so so rigid with them, so strict with them, right? He also learned that Stephen, when he was about to kill Stephen, he learned that he was Abigail's brother, who he was looking for, right? So another moment that he could have done something about it, and still he decided to go ahead. So there is moments where Paul was called to follow Jesus many times, right? But at the same time, in the book, when we read it, we can see moments that he listened the message, he got a little bit, he got how can I say, Paul gets a little bit uncomfortable, because those things that he heard kind of makes sense for him, but because of his pride, because he's willing to keep forcing in everything that he learned about the laws, and to have his peace, he needs to follow every single thing in those laws, make him close the door to those new lessons, and he didn't listen to that. So although he was touched, he didn't follow exactly what he could, right? So, and that happened to us every time, right? Many times, I would say. We heard a call, we stop and we think, I should do different, and then we go and do something else. Other times we heard the call and we do what Jesus wants us to do, right? And that is the moment that we transform a little bit. So those transformations is happening all the time to all of us, right? So it's not that Paul just got transformed after he saw Jesus. No, he got transformed. He started to be transformed for sure for many incarnations before, but talking about that incarnation that the book is about, that moment, he been touched for many times before he met with Jesus. You know, he transformed. He get a little bit of the lesson every time. Okay, but it doesn't stop there, right? So the lessons keep coming after he meets with Jesus, because the first thing that he does after he meets with Jesus, he tried to reveal Jesus' teachings to the other Jewish people. So he was so happy with the knowledge, and I know that it happens also. Well, it happened to me when I learned about Spiritism. I want everybody to know about it. You know, I don't want to convert everyone to Spiritism, right? So I was in this insane moment saying, you know, my mother, my parents has been Catholic for their entire lives, and I want to convert them to Spiritism like this, and like, because I thought that it was the best thing in the world, right? So that's what happened to Paul as well. So what happened is, once he got cured by Ananias, he said, well, I'm gonna read what is in the book. Tomorrow is the Sabbath, and there will be a lesson in the synagogue. So Sabbath was the day that the Jewish people get together and they go to the synagogue. Synagogues today are temples, right? They are considered temples now. But at that time, there was just one temple. There was the Temple of Solomon, and the synagogue was just a place where people got together to listen to those elder people, or who knew the law better than anyone else, to learn, right? Today we have the Bible, Spirit's book, all the books that we won in internet, right? It's very easy, but at that time it was not that simple. So they get together in those synagogues to learn. So he said that tomorrow is the Sabbath, and there will be a lesson in the synagogue. I intend to look for my friends and to tell them publicly about my call from Christ. But I saw Jesus. And then he said, if I saw Jesus, I have no right to hide such an incontestable revelation, and the occasion could not be more opportune, because I know Sadak, his friend who was there, is still learning some renowned Levites who recently arrived from Cyprus. So he knew what would happen. He knew that because of his power, his condition in the Jewish, you know, his status in the Jewish culture there at that time, he would be listened to in the synagogue. Everybody would stop to listen to what he has to say, right? So he was very happy, passionate about the topic, and he just considered to go there, and he went there. You know, that was his first decision, you know, was talk to them, even though Ananias asking him, is this the right time for you to do this? You know, are you sure these people are the first ones who you should be talking with, right? And he said, yes, I need to go there. I need to share all of this knowledge with them. And then he goes there. And what happened is that people didn't care about it. You know, they just thought, you know, he probably very sick, or he's not thinking well, and nothing happened to him, right? He was not, because of his status, he didn't got killed like Stephen, but people really thought that he was out of his mind. So that is another lesson that came to him, where his self-esteem was crushed, and he once again learned a little bit more, you know, learn about humbleness, right? And in the book it says, accustomed to applause wherever he appeared, he had been the victim of his own illusions, for thinking that to speak successfully about Jesus, the ephemeral lauders he had already won in the world would be enough. So sat a rustic bench and wept. he struggled between the vanity of the past and the self-renunciation that has begun. So that moment, he starts expiating everything that he had done in the past, right? So we can see that in the same life, in our lives we are always expiating, but in this case, he's going through exactly what Stephen went through, or his own decision, right? He went there. He thought that he would be applauded. Everybody would like what he's saying, but what happened is it's totally different. So he starts to understand about his own vanity, right? And unfortunately, that's the way that we learn. We learn sometimes, right? We learn by pain, and we learning, going through some experiences that we hopefully it wouldn't be happening, right? And Paul at that time, he had to go. He went through that because we don't have to go. It's always our option, right? It's our free will. So he could say, no, I'm not going there yet. Let me learn more. Let me see what Jesus really wants from me, and then I go and talk. But he decided to do that. So we need to understand that, he needs to understand as well at that time that when we have new ideas, we need new ways of doing things, right? So that's what he should have understand that time, that going and talk to those very skilled, very orthodox Jewish would not help him, would not help the cause of Jesus at that time. So it's really necessary, and that is it's in the book again. For me, it was a very powerful message that comes from the book that I put here, that it says, it is necessary to die to the word so that Christ can live in us. It's necessary to die to the word so that Christ can live in us. What that means, right? It definitely does not mean that we need to disincarnate so we can be ready to be with Christ, right? That's not that. It does not mean as well that if we are isolating ourselves in a place just to meditate, to pray, it will help as well. So that's not the answer, and we see that in the Spiritist book as well. There is a piece that talks about we isolating ourselves, right? What it really means is that we start doing things differently. We need to do things in a different way if we want to be, if we want to have Christ, if we want to have Jesus inside of us, can live in us. And if we take the gospel at home as an example, right? We could say that it gives us much more pleasure laying down in the sofa watching TV. You don't need to think about anything. You're just there watching TV. It's much more. There is much more pleasure in that than spend a few hours, not a few hours, a few minutes reading an enlightening book and doing our gospel at home. We could think about it, right? Because doing the gospel at home, it's a moment that we really need to think about ourselves, our actions, what we do. It's a moment of reflection, not a moment that we're just there doing nothing and just thinking as a relaxing way, right? It's much easier to watch TV than talk about what we need to change in ourselves, and that is just because that's part of our tendencies. It's part of what we have been doing for many years, right? We see that as much easier. So having Jesus inside of us is really taking a different approach, starting with our gospel at home. So gospel at home should be something that really gives us pleasure. If it's not giving you pleasure, there is something wrong there. We have to think about it, right? It could mean it could also be an example when we are with our friends. What we are talking with our friends. Are we gossiping around, about other people? Are we talking badly about other people, or are we talking about what we could do to have a better planet? And what we could do to help someone else that is in need. Talk about that friend instead of talking badly about them. What can we talk about? How can we help that friend, right? So it's all about what we have around us, what we are doing with our lives in this planet. And again, guys, it doesn't mean that I will stop working and I will be meditating. I will give everything that I have and being living in a very poor place, a situation, right? That's not at all what we are saying. So dying to the word is really dying to that pride, that vanity, all the vices that we have inside of us. Okay. And Paul, he got that. He got those friends, brothers and sisters that was helping him, be part of a community where our brothers and sisters all following God laws and Jesus teachings is something that help us to keep strong, right? So in the book there is a passage when he says Christians of Damascus impressed Paul more deeply. They conquered his soul, enwrapping it with imperishable affection through their gestures of trust and love, treating him as a brother. So that was one moment that Paul really understood what is the love, the trust of someone that sees him as a brother, and not someone in that very high level position that could benefit them, right? So yes, Paul thought that he had many friends, but many of them was really just interested in what Paul could give to them because of his power at that time, right? And this is an example that we talk about, we learn from pain, but we can also learn from love. When we get love from someone else, those actions of love also teach us. We always say that, if you know that person that is doing the bad thing, this is what you shouldn't be doing. You can learn what you shouldn't be doing. But if you see someone doing something good, you can learn what you could be doing as well, right? So it's good that we get along with people with the same beliefs. It's good that we have people that, and when I say same beliefs and the same moral values, doesn't mean that it's the same religion, right, guys? We can have a Christian that do not believe in Christ. We can have a very good Christians, because it's all about the actions, the love, the forgiveness, the indulgence, all those characteristics. It's not really a religion per se. Okay, so if we are surrounded about those people that can help us to keep that positivity and keep that moral aspect, it would help us a lot, and yeah. So another thing that I brought here, it was if we are living in a place where everybody's happy, everything could happen in the same happening ways of doing things, what progress we would have, right? So if you think about Jesus, where Jesus is Jesus there in another planet just being happy with other happy people and nothing else? No, Jesus is here. Jesus is in this planet helping us, right? He's not there isolated in that happy planet doing, I don't know what they do in a happy place, doing whatever they have to do there, being happy, right? He's here. His happiness is being here helping us. And that's one thing that for us to always remember, that the happiness is not in another place, in another planet, in another life. Happiness is inside of us, in each one of us. We need to find it. It's not exterior place. Okay, in the Gospel according to Spiritist, we have very many examples of that, telling us about that. But there is a piece that talks about the duty as the duty to be the example, and that requires a lot of courage, right? Being this Christian example requires a lot of courage in the world that we live today. And by courage, if we think about what that word means, it means that we act with our hearts, acting with our love. So that's the courage that we have, that we go outside and we start to acting as Jesus would like us to act, regardless of what people would think about us, right? Because that's one thing that we always afraid, what people will think about me. Excuse me. Right? So at that moment, he knew that he would never be alone, right? Again. And there's another very beautiful passage in the book that says, everything was so hard. He was like a man who had lost his family, his country, his home. Profound despair threatened to invade his heart. So, being separated from those he loved, that he knew, all the teachings that he thought that was the right teachings, and starting, it's like starting everything new, right? Many of us here came from a different country. You know how difficult it is to adjust to a new culture. So he was in that moment feeling totally alone and totally thinking about what now. And the story continues saying, suddenly, however, he remembered Christ, and the recollection of the glorious vision filled his disconsolated spirit with comfort. Trusting much more in the one who had reached out to him than in his own strength, he sought to calm his inner anguish, bringing repose to his weary body. So the memory of Jesus came to his mind and bringing him peace, right? And he knew that from that moment he would never be alone again, because he always gonna remember those that vision with Christ. And then we can think, oh my God, it was so much easier if I could have met Jesus, and then every time that I'm on a crisis, I just remember him, and it would be much simpler, right? But we do have that. We have all the lessons that Jesus brought to us. We have I read also that from all the old books, the ones of the gospel was the ones with the best it was the better protected, and it was better. I'm missing the words today. It could in better conditions than any other old book that they have ever found. So all the lessons are there. We have those teachings, so we don't need to have Jesus as a person, a picture in our minds. Well, we do have some pictures, you can if you want to, but remembering all the lessons that Jesus brought to us, that's the image that we could have in our minds, right? In the Gospel according to Spiritism, it also says that the interest of the future life should be placed above all human interests and considerations, because such thought is in accordance with the substance of Jesus' doctrine. So sometimes we get very tied to what is happening here and now, and we get lost, we get confused, but we forgot that what really matters is this eternal life that we're gonna have, right? That everything is not only here and now. There is so much more. That what is happening here and now, yes, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's really frustrating, but we need to keep our faith strong. Say, okay, this is just one more day. It shall pass as well. Right? Everything will be fine. And he also understood that he would be a little bit separate from everything that he knew. Right? We said a little bit about that. So it was not a easy separation. When we die to the world and start to have Christ living in us, it's a transformation moment. It's like, when we die, it's over. It's something else needs to start, right? So it's at that time it was really hard, because he was moving from everything that he knew, everyone, to something totally new. It's different from today, right? We can have a family of 5 people, and each one of them being a totally different religions, everybody getting along very well. It's the religion tolerance is really okay, but if those 5 people does not act, their actions don't resonate with each other, they will not be connected either, right? They will separate themselves. And then we have that being explained in the Gospel according to Spiritism, that we're gonna get connected to those that we have a affinity with, right? Affinity on the way things that we do every day, how we want to conduct our lives, all the moral aspects that the people in that family would have. We of course we brought everybody to one single family in a moment, so we can learn from each other. The family is the first example of a society that we're gonna live, right? But when we grow up, we have our own free will to make decisions who we want to have along us, right? And Jesus is always there, helping us to go and go through this path, and remember to have faith in the future, right? Another example of what Paul went through is that he start to work again in the profession that his father had taught him, not as a person that is managing a synagogue and all the laws, controlling and other things. Because at that time, the parents, and let's talk a little bit in this book, right? All the parents teach their kids on a profession, and so they could continue that, right? And he started to work again in the desert. But in that desert, he met 2 people where he gonna live with, and he start to go through. I think he stayed there for 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, where he learned more and more about Jesus' teachings. The 2 persons that was there receiving him, they left Jerusalem because of both Tarsus, and when he got there, he didn't tell them who he really was, right? So they learned it, they were studying together, and it wasn't when they got 3 years there that he really told to them what was who he really was. But during those years, he was humbling himself, understanding all the Jesus teachings. And I'm gonna read here what we have in the book. There is very nice. Simple work is great teacher of the spirit of submission. I shall live with those less smited upon my fortune. I shall more intimately become involved in their daily troubles. In contact with other people's pain, I shall learn to conquer my own lower impulses, becoming more patient and more humane. So he went to the desert, and he met this couple, and he started knowing more about them, and that he really started to understand what the Christians of that time was going through, right? So he learned a lot of things that he authorized it because the way that he was acting other people below him to do, right? He may not knew exactly what each person that was under his command was doing, but because the way that he reacted with Stephen, everybody else thought that they could do the same thing, right? They had the power to do the same thing. So it was a painfully lesson for him to humble himself, but at the same time, as he goes through those trials and seeing, doing the hard work, he starts to understand, be grateful for everything that he had before, right? And be grateful for the small things that he had in that moment. That he could have a job. That job could give him a house, could give him food, what he need to that moment go through that transformation, right? So he was doing 3 years there, and the years to come, it would all be dedicated to those in need, like Peter and the other apostles did at that time, right? So he understood at that moment, he really understood that to find his peace, he would need to go to the unfortunate people and help them, right? And he also was not alone even before he become a Christian, right? He met all those Christians, etc. He was getting help in the early stages of his transformation, And this couple, Aquila and Prisca, they shared with him that when he was about to tell them who he really was, he asked them, "What do you think of Saul now?" Saul was his name before he became Paul, right? What do you think of Paul now? And Aquila said, "The gospel says that we are to consider him a brother very much in need of the light of Jesus Christ. I have prayed to God for him, hoping that a ray of heaven will enlighten him." So, although he could be considered an enemy for Aquila and Prisca, they were praying for them, and that's what the gospel asks us when they talk about love your enemy, right? Sometimes we think that loving our enemy is to become best friends and have that person in our houses, etc. But if we can at least pray a little bit, that would be something very, very powerful for that person. And in these days, we know all these wars happening around the world and all the bad things that we hear every day. We forget the power of praying, right? So if the power, the praying for one person at that time could help Paul to be converted, imagine what we could do if everybody's praying with the same objective. How powerful that could be, right? And in the gospel we have that whatever you say, you may ask for in pray, believe, you will receive it, and it will be granted to you. And then that is in Mark chapter 11 verse 24. And then the gospel according to Spirit, go and explain a little bit. And I take note of 3 things that for me it was really important when you think about the prayer, right? Prayer, and the gospel says, prayer is an invocation. By means of prayer we communicate through thought with the being to whom the prayer is addressing. So we are communicating to that person. We are giving. It's like if we are telling something to that person, right? In our prayers. And so many people saying the same thing. That person will probably be hearing that, right? It also says the current energy depends on the strength of the thought and the will. So it's not just because we are praying for a person that person can be heard, that prayer can be heard. It's all depend our will, how much we really want that, right? It's that when we are praying, are we praying with the bottom of our hearts? Are really praying, willing to help that person, or are you doing just automatic? You know. And I'll be honest with you guys. Sometimes I noticed that I was just praying for the sake of praying, you know. And is that being considered? Yeah, but what is the power of that? You know, if me and my wife praying for the same thing, and while we're praying, I'm just saying the words, and she is really meaning that from the bottom of her heart, just repeating my words, that prayer is much more powerful than what I was saying. You know, that's important for us to take. And another thing that I take note here that is important is that prayers that are rejected, because our prayers could be rejected, are those of the proud, who have faith in their own power and worthiness, and who think they can replace the will of the Eternal One. So, are we really praying for love, or just praying, you know, to get away a problem of my life? You know, God, please take this person out of my life because it will be better for him. No, it will be better for me, right? So, what is the reason why we're praying, right? So that's really important. So, hopefully, you know, at that time, those early Christians, they were praying, and it seems that it was heard. This was heard, and then Jesus was there. And and Prisca, when she was answered to that, Paul, when Aquila, when he continued his answers to Paul, they always remember the lesson of forgiveness that that Peter was always teaching them. And Aquila said, Prisca, do you remember how earnestly we entreated the Lord for the persecutor in the intimate prayers at the church? So do you remember how intensively we pray for the persecutor? Many times, in order to clarify our weak spirit about forgiveness, Peter the apostle told us to consider the implacable rabbi as a brother whom violence had darkness. So Aquila and Prisca was telling him that, you know, they was praying because they was forgiving them, Paul, right? So they was giving the lesson of forgiveness to Paul at that moment. And in the book, Aquila also said that Peter always remembered that he himself has denied Jesus 3 times before the crucifixion, right? So that very important moment in Jesus' life, and Jesus knew that it would happen, right? Peter has denied Jesus 3 times, right? So, and that was a lesson for all of them, saying, we're all imperfect, right? If we want to be forgiven, we need to forgive, right? If we want others, it's easy to in my opinion, for me, it's always easier to forgive someone if I can see that I make the same mistake. You know, sometimes it doesn't need to be exactly the same mistakes, right? But it's easy to understand that, you know, everybody makes mistakes. Why? And including myself, why I cannot forgive this person, right? And then it's a moment that we need to look to ourselves and say, you know, you are not perfect. Learn to forgive. So that was a lesson for forgiveness for Paul as well. And to finish the lecture, I just want to share what Abigail, the person who Paul loved the most in the incarnation, he had a chance to talk to her and to Stephen again, and she gave him some guidance on how to deal with life. And he asked many questions I choose one of them to here we have the answer. So the first fact was, what could he do to acquire a perfect understanding of Christ's designs? So what we can do to understand what Christ wants for us? And her answer was love. You know, love one, and that's what Jesus teach us, right? Taught us love one another, right? So practicing the love is, if you want to understand what Jesus wants from you, just love. But how he proceed in order to grow richer in divine virtues? Work. So working is the way that we can create these divine virtues, and all type of works, right? So working, we have the opportunity to working to have our bread at the end of the day, you know, have our salaries, working as a volunteer work, anything that we can produce is in a way to also get the divine virtues. What measures could he adopt against such destructive discouragement? And she's answer, have hope, right? Because as we go through our lives, as we do our work, as we love, we're gonna have people that will come and discourage us of doing that, right? Many times. And that's where we need to have hope. And his last question was, how was he to reconcile the grand lessons of the gospel with human indifference, right? So there's moments he was, you know, I have all this knowledge I want to share, but people don't care about. What do I do with it, right? And she says, forgive, right? You know, they may not just ready to listen to that. Okay, so those are the 4 things that Abigail gave him as guidance: love, work, have hope, and forgive. Okay, and this is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcio. So we have a couple of minutes if anyone have any questions or comments, or anyone online. Nope, nothing? Okay, so we'll get ready for the passes. Thank you very much. And thank you for those who join us online. Hope to see you next Sunday.
The back to actually come to the front and fill it up all the chairs that we have in here. This makes it a bit easier. Acho que não fica lá. Quem que tá lá? Pode dar sala? Acho que não. Aqui, não. Quer que eu tenha que ensinar? Beleza, Marcio Lee. Não, we have more chairs here at the front, makes it a bit easier so you have less line, so the people are sitting at the back